Ruchem Aboim, Shem Irgen Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome the whole Olam and everyone who wasn't here last night who's joining us for our 24th annual Summer Shiurim program of Batzas HaTorah, Kiddush Hashem programs in Borough Park, Flatbush, and Williamsburg, which are a part of Irgen Shir Torah's Batzas HaTorah throughout the year. Also like to welcome everyone who's joining on the phone and everyone who's watching through Torah Anytime, Yeshiva World, etc. And all the Noshim Tzidkanias upstairs and downstairs, of course. I'd like to give a big yeshikayach to Rabbi and Mrs. Dovid Lang for sponsoring tonight's Shir L'Tzchus for Shlema for Dvorah Baschana B'Soy Shachar Yisrael. I'd like to give a yeshikayach to Elam Shem for the support of tonight's Shir L'Nishmas, Rabbi Shayo Yisachar Ben Rav Simcha Bonim Alav Shalom. As you know, Irgen Shir Torah relies on the support of the Tzibur to help with the great expenses to bring these programs of Shiurim to the community. Please call Irgen Shir Torah, sponsor a shir, and help us with these great expenses, 718-851-8651, or email tapecenter@yeshivanet.com. Tonight we have the covered to have with us once again Rabbi Paysach Krohn, noted darshan and author on the topic of Chizuk, compliments, and constructive characters. My cover to call on Rabbi Krohn for tonight's drasha.
It's a great schus to have been invited by Rabbi Elazar Bald and Rabbi Simcha Deutsch once again to come to Irgen Shir Torah. We all owe them a tremendous thanks for what they've done, not only here in Brooklyn, but throughout the world. Really, they're involved in planning over 1,000 shiurim a year. They should help that they should have continued koiches to continue doing it at Bias HaGoyel. Less than 2 weeks ago, the Olam HaTorah, and specifically the Olam HaChinuch, suffered a tremendous loss. And that was the loss and the petira of somebody who was so beloved by so many of us here, and that was the loss of Rabbi Dovid Trenk, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. Anybody who knew him felt invigorated by him. Anybody who knew him knew that his Avos Yisrael and his Avos Talmidim was unsurpassed. As my Rebbe, Rabbi Dovid Cohen, who was his brother-in-law, said, that there are very few people in Klal Yisrael who are as beloved as Rabbi Dovid Trenk, and that was because there were very few people in Klal Yisrael who loved other Jews the way Rabbi Dovid Trenk loved them. And it's because of that I want to share with you a very interesting vart that Rav Hutner said, and that's going to be the theme of what we've come to talk about tonight. At the end of Parshas Beshalach, the Torah tells us that Moshe was planning a war against Amalek. And he calls in Yeshua. Vayomer Moshe el Yeshua. Moshe says to Yeshua, Bechar lonu anoshim. Let us pick out people. V'tzei hilachem b'Amalek. And we're going to go fight against Amalek. And it's interesting, Rashi says, Bechar lonu, me and you, leave alach, me and you, we're going to pick out. He made him like an equal. Hashvei olai. He spoke to him like an equal. This is his Talmud. And he says, let's do it together. Mikan Omru, from here we see, Yehi kavod talmidach chaviv alecha kishalach. The kavod of your Talmud should be so important in your own mind as your own kavod. All of us want kavod. All of us want to be validated. That's how you have to treat a Talmud as well. So, of course, Rav Hutner asks, of course, it's very important to be concerned for the kavod of your Talmud. But what's it doing here by Amalek? Write it by Kriyas HaTorah, by Limud HaTorah. Write it by when there's a relationship between a Rebbe and a Talmud. What is it doing here at the end of Beshalach? And he says something very interesting. He says, if you take a look at the last pasuk in Beshalach, the words are Milchama Lashem Ba'Molek Midar Dar. the Muhammad, the Hashem, maintains a war against Amalek from generation to generation. Zok Rav Hutner, where's Amalek? Who's Amalek? And Rav Hutner says something very clever. He says, you know what Amalek is? Anything that doesn't allow us to transfer Torah and Yiddishkeit and Messiah to the next generation. That's what it means. Milchama Hashem Amalek, you know what the Milchama of Hashem against Amalek is? Anything, whether it's advertisements, whether it's individuals, whether it's immorality, anything that causes somebody to not be able to give over Torah and Messiah to the next generation, Midor Dor, that's what Amalek is all about. And that's why it's here. Because if you want to give over to your Talmud the Messiah of Yiddishkeit, and you want to give over the Geschmack of mitzvahs and Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, then the only way you're going to do it is if you love the Talmud. And you give him kavod, and he feels that you love him and you care for him. And so I want to share with you a beautiful story about Rabbi Dovid Trenk. And all of us, as I'm telling you the story, think about what we would do if we were the Rebbe in this situation. All of us know that for many, many years he was a Rebbe in Adelphia Yeshiva, Mashgiach, he took care of the Talmidim. Rav Gedalia Zlotowitz told me this remarkable story. One Friday night, a boy in the yeshiva stole Rav Dovid Trenk's car. And he took the car and he went to a movie theater. And he went to watch a movie. Somehow Dovid Trenk found out about it, and he left the yeshiva, he walked to the movie theater. Now, I don't know if any of you were ever in the Adelphia Yeshiva. It was off Route 9, but not off Route 9. It was deep in. So that was a long walk to get to Route 9 and then to go to the theater. He comes to the ticket agent, the lady that's sitting up front, and he says, ma'am, I don't want to buy a ticket, but I have a student who's inside, and I've got to tell him something. So can I just go in, and I'll come right out? And she says, fine. And he goes into the dark theater Friday night, and he's looking around for his Talmud, and he finds him. And he sits down right next to him. And he says to him, the popcorn that they sell here is not kosher. Make sure you don't eat it. That's what he said. Nothing more. And he turns to leave. And the Talmud grabs a hold of him. Says, Rebbe, I'm coming with you. And the Talmud walked back with Rabbi Dovid Trenk all the way back to the yeshiva. And he said to him, I swear, I will never be Machal Shabbos again. What would we do if we were the Rebbe? What would we say to that Talmud? Stole the car, on Shabbos, goes to a movie theater, but that's Yehi Kavod Talmida Chaviv Alecha Kishalach. It's almost unimaginable that a human being in our generation should be able to have such savlonis and such love of Talmidim and such understanding of what's going to make a Talmud become inspired. And that's exactly what Rav Hutner is saying. Here is a boy that could have gone off the derech, and his family, his children, would all be lost eventually. But yet, that's midor dor. When you know how to do it, and the Talmud feels that love, all of a sudden it's a different ballgame. A story was written about Rav Dovid. It was at a Torah Masorah convention. And at many, many of these conventions, after a speaker speaks, they have a panel and questions are asked. So I was not at this Torah Masorah convention, but I understand that Rabbi Yisvei was one of the people that was on the panel, and there were many people that were asking questions. And one of the questions that was asked was a very painful question. And it's a question that needs great, great Yishuv Adas. And the question was, at what point do you throw out a kid from the yeshiva? Do you have to wait till he's influencing others? How much can you take from the child? Does his family make a difference? And everybody was waiting to hear what the Rosh Yeshiva of Philadelphia would say. It was very tense and very quiet. And all of a sudden, in this quietness, in the huge audience, Rabbi Dovid Trenk got up and he screamed out, "It's a Yiddish neshama! It's a Yiddish neshama! It's a Yiddish neshama!" And he sat down. And Rabbi Yisvei said, "We don't argue with Rabbi Dovid Trenk." Now, I don't know what the final answer was, but one thing is for sure. Everybody there saw what it means to care for other Talmidim. And that's what he was all about. And it's so interesting that just a few weeks ago, we went through Sefira, and we know that the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva died dafka during Sefira before Shavuos. And Rabbi Aaron Kotler asked a very interesting question. Why did Hashem make it that they should die during Sefira before Kabbalah Satayra? Imagine because Shalai Nogel Kavod Zeh B'Zeh. Imagine if they died in Elul. Or imagine if they died in Aseret Yimei Tshuva. Every Rav, every Rebbe, every Mora would have what to say in class. Look what happened. They died. Shalai Nogel Kavod Zeh B'Zeh. We got to do Tshuva Rosh Hashanah. We got to do Tshuva Aseret Yimei Tshuva. We got to do Tshuva before Yom Kippur. Let's be perfect. But that's not when they died. They died before Shavuos, during Sefira. And Rabbi Aaron writes in Mishnah Rabbi Aaron, "The kivan the chosa lahem bediktu chaverim," being that they didn't get along with each other, which is one of the memches dvarim. What happened? Ein toirosam betachlis karoi. Their Torah was not the ultimate way. Umemela lo hayuruyim liyos hamoisrim the Torah shebal peh l'doros. They could not be the ones that would give over Torah to the next generation. That's why they died before Shavuos. To teach us a great lesson. To teach every Rebbe, every Mora, and every father, and every mother. If you want to be the one that's going to give over Torah and Messiah and the love of Yiddishkeit to your children and your Talmidim and your Talmidos and your grandchildren, you got to love them. And not only you got to love them, but they have to feel that you love them. You can't just say you love them and they know that you're really not proud of them and you wish that they were in another family. Kids understand. They see right through you. But because they didn't get along with each other and they didn't have a love for each other, they couldn't give it over to the next generation because they wouldn't love the Talmidim. And the Maharal asks an interesting question anyway. The Maharal says, why would they die? After all, they didn't kill anybody. They didn't eat Yom Kippur. They didn't drive on Shabbos. So what's the reason why they died? And the Maharal gives us an expression in Yevamos Samach Beis Amud Beis, which is worth trying to remember. Kashenoyig koved b'chaverai. When you give koved to your friend, dover zehu etzem achayim. That's the essence of life. Imagine you walked in tonight here in Irgun Shirei Torah, and not one person said Shalom Aleichem to you. Not one person greeted you. A person could feel, Shalom Aleichem, what am I doing? Doesn't anybody care about me? So when you give koved, when you validate somebody, you give them life. When you take away koved from others, you're taking away life. And on their madrega, that's what they did. They took away life from each other. That's why their lives were taken away. And that's what we have to learn tonight. Tonight, we're going to learn the importance of giving chizuk, the importance of building someone, the importance of empowering others, motivating others, and validating others. And when you do that, that's when Klal Yisrael is united. And that's exactly what happened by Har Sinai. Vayichan Shom Yisrael neged Ahor. It should have said Vayachanu. They rested. Why does it say Vayichan? Loshen Yochid. And of course, we all know Ki ish echad, b'lev echad. They were all like one. They all cared for each other. And that's what we say. Kulam ahuvim, kulam berurim. V'chulam neisim b'yavar ashuz zeh lazeh. Everyone, they give to each other the opportunity to grow. And that's what we have to learn tonight. How do we do that? So I want to share with you something that I just said literally this past Sunday. Not Sunday, actually on Friday. I was just in Poland, just got back Sunday. And Friday, I had the great zchus to daven by the kever of the Ramah in Krakow. And we spoke in the Ramah Shul. It's a trip that you should all take if it's possible. It's such an amazing, intense, inspiring trip to go to Poland, to be in these places, the Lublina Yeshiva, to be by the Rebbe Rabbi Melech and the concentration camps, and to talk about the Mesiras Nefesh, and to be by the Ramah. And I told them that the Ramah had a Talmud, the Levush. And listen to this din in Shulchan Aruch that the Levush writes. And this is in Tov Kuf Pei Daled Siv Beis. And it says like this. Yesh b'koimos, there are places, shenoyagim, that the minig is to give the Baal Tekeya, the one who's blowing shofar, to give him one of the 5 aliyahs of the day. Now, there's only 5 aliyahs. There's not 7 aliyahs like on a Shabbos. So those aliyahs are very choshev. And yet, there's a minig in many places, Dr. Levush, that's what the Ramah says. The Levush explains why. To give the Baal Tekeya one of the aliyahs. Why? Listen to this. Dr. Levush, she'al yedei zeh, because he's going to get the aliyah, Ye'ushar koichoi, he's going to have that strength. She'yochal litkoya yofa, he's going to be able to blow better. Because when you give somebody covet, and you validate somebody, and you make him feel chashiv, then he's going to perform in a miraculous way. And then, of course, it says, Ki im yita, chas v'sholom, if a Baal Tekeya makes a mistake, simin rala sholchov, that's a terrible simin for those that send him up there. So here, in a sense, they're giving him a compliment. There's a big shul, a couple hundred people in shul. But we're giving you the aliyah. You know why? Because you're special. You're blowing shofar for us. And the guy feels so good. And as it's written in Rotzel L'Samchai, we want to make him happy, because through that, he's going to be able to blow shofar. That's what a compliment is all about. When you give a compliment to your child, they will perform in an incredible way that you would never believe. And that's what every parent, every father, every mother, every Rebbe, every Morah has to know that. I want to tell you what a compliment is. How every single one of us here, and tens of thousands in the world, gained from one compliment. Many, many years ago, when I was in Camp Aguda, so we had somebody who was a fabulous artist. He was a few years older than me. His name was Meir Zlotowitz. And when you're in Color War, and I lived a whole year for Color War, that was my whole life, you know, coming to Camp Aguda and being part of Color War. I lost every single year Color War, except when I was general. The Eibishter Rachmanis on me. But whatever, when you were a general in Color War, you had to pick out the best artist so that you would have a beautiful banner. And of course, every year that Meir Zlotowitz was in camp, he was always chosen first, because nobody could draw a banner like he did. So, but there was a friend that was also in camp that was very close in age to Meir Zlotowitz. His name was Meir Fogel. And Rahman al-Itzlan, Meir Fogel, got married, never had any children, and he died very young. So in 1975, when he died, Meir Zlotowitz, who was his good friend, decided, you know what, I want to do something l'zecher nishmas Meir Fogel. He was thinking, what could he do? So he decided, you know what, I'm going to write a commentary on Megillas Esther, and I'll give it out to a few friends, and like this, anybody who learns it, I'll write that it's l'zecher nishmas Meir Fogel, and it'll be a schus for his neshama. So he wrote the commentary, and he showed it to Rabbi Dovid Cohen, who was a good friend of his, and Rabbi Dovid said, this is so good, you can't just give this out. You got to publish this. He said, what do you mean publish this? He said, listen, you have a company, right? Now, he used to draw scrolls, and he used to draw manuscripts for dinners. And the name of his company was called Art Scroll, because he did scrolls of art. He said, listen, you got a company, just publish it. And publish it, and many people will gain from it. He said, you think it's worth it? He said, of course it's worth it. It's brilliant. So he got a guy by the name, and I shouldn't say a guy. He got a Choshev Talmud Chacham, Rav Nosson Sherman, who was a Rebbe in Stalin at that time, or maybe already he was in Tervadas, and he said, listen, Rav David says I got to publish it, so we need an introduction, and they called it an overview. And they printed it. And within weeks, 20,000 of those Megillas Esther were printed. And that was the beginning of ArtScroll. One compliment by Rav Dovid Cohen. And then what happened, when they saw how many it sold, then they decided, you know what, we got to do Rus for Shavuos. And then we got to do Eicha for Tisha B'Av. And then we got to do Kehelas for Sukkot. Then we got to do Shashirim for Pesach. Every single one of us here, and every person that's listening that speaks English around the world, if you're an Orthodox Jew, you own at least one ArtScroll book. I hope it's a Maggid book. But let's face it. We're going to have, on January 1, 2020, 95,000 people at the Siyum HaShas. Half of them will have learned Shas through ArtScroll. One compliment. Isn't that amazing? One compliment that he should get it published, and that was the catalyst for ArtScroll. What a great schus. You never know when you give somebody a compliment, and there are many, many people, I don't want to embarrass them, they know that when they do a good job in videos and other things that I always call them to compliment them, because when you do something and you put your heart and soul in it, you want to be validated. You want to feel that it was worth it. So now I want to show you something. And I appreciate that the technician is in the back. I hope that all of you that are here will be able to see it. And if not, I'll show you the pictures afterwards. And those that are watching upstairs or around the country, wherever you're watching, I hope you'll be able to see it. A few weeks ago, actually it was Parshas Pekudei, I got a call from Houston. And a young Koilo fellow calls me up and he says, do you remember you were in Houston a couple years ago? I said, yeah. He said, do you remember you met a boy that has only one hand? I said, you know, I would think that I would remember that, but I don't. He said, well, that boy's having a bar mitzvah this week, Parshas Pekudei. And you told him many years ago that when he has a bar mitzvah, if he sends you an invitation, you might come. I said, I didn't get an invitation. He said, I'll tell you why you didn't get an invitation. Because he went to his father, and he said to his father, remember Rabbi Krohn said that he would come? Could we send him an invitation? So the father said no. He said, why not? He said, because he's so busy. He was just being a nice guy. He doesn't really have time. I don't want to put the pressure on him. But this Kurla guy said, maybe you could call him, because that would be special. He has only one hand. He's putting on tefillin, and he's a darling boy. His name is Nehemiah Passel. I said, of course, give me his number. I'll call him. Now, it's hard to believe, but this is a picture of him putting on tefillin. Again, it's hard to see it. You'll come up here afterwards, you'll see it. He has only a stump on his right hand and one finger on it. I'll hold it up, but you can't see it. You've got to see it on the screen or whatever. And here's how he holds the tefillin bag again. And this is the picture of how he has to adjust the shalyad, the shalrosh rather, with his left hand, right? I'm looking at it backwards. And so, of course, I called him and I complimented him. And then as I was talking to him, I suddenly realized, hey, wait a second. I'm not the guy that's supposed to give him chizuk. I know somebody who could give him chizuk 10 times better than me. There's a guy in Sao Paulo who's over 80 years old, who's one of the sponsors of the Masechta of ArtScroll, Hurrias, you can look it up. He's over 80 years old, and when he was 19, he lost his entire left arm in a car accident. I've met him many, many times. I know his relatives very well. That's where I stay when I go to Sao Paulo. I called him up, and I said, you know, there is this little boy in Houston who's having a bar mitzvah, and he has only one hand like you do. Would you be able to write him a note and just wish him mazel tov? And he said, of course. So I thought that this man was going to write like an email of 3 lines. He wrote him an email which is 3 pages. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just want to show you what it means when somebody validates and cares about somebody else. He writes, Din Nechemya, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. On the occasion of your bar mitzvah, it's my privilege and honor to wish you from the bottom of my heart that Hashem should grant you to always go from strength to strength and merit to go on and become an Adam Gadol. He says, my name is Wally Stern. I'm 89, and I live in São Paulo, Brazil. I lost my entire left arm in a car accident at the age of 19. At that time, I was completely devastated. But the first thought flashing through my mind was, I will not let this accident drag me down and stop me in life. I will try my best to continue life business as usual, as if nothing happened as far as possible. And Baruch Hashem, Hashem has been kind to me. I've been able to do many positive things, learn and work and run a successful business. As I told you, he sponsored a Gemara Hoirias, you'll look it up. He works for raising money for Efrat. And listen to this. It never stopped me from driving a car. I used to play tennis when I was younger, with one hand, imagine, and even started to ski at age 50. Could you believe that? Doing so for many years. And then he writes him, your handicap is all in your mind. It's your mind that instructs and commands your actions. Thanks to Hashem, I've been successful in all my endeavors. And he writes, I can understand what it is, but he says, I'm just telling you, if you look at yourself as not having the handicap, other people will also not look at you as having a handicap. At the end of the day, the basis for people to decide how to relate to you, is your own behavior and how you relate to yourself and your own handicap. And of course, he wishes him mazel and bracha, he should be an Adam Gadol. When the father got this letter, because he sent it to the father's email, he took it and he framed it, and he hung it up in the room of Nehemiah. Nehemiah will go the rest of his life with these words of Chizuk. That's what a compliment is. And if any of us have ever gone through anything in life, and we see somebody else that has gone through the same thing, that's exactly what we have to do. We have to give Chizuk and tell that person, listen, what you're going through, I went through, and if I can make it, you can make it. And that's how you validate and make somebody feel special. I'll tell you something very important. Sometimes we're embarrassed to compliment someone. But there's an inyan of letting a person know that they're special. And even the Rabbeinu Shalom does that. Right in the beginning of Sefer Shemais, the first Rashi, and right in the beginning of Sefer Bamidbar, the first Rashi. Look at those Rashis and you'll see an amazing thing. Ve'ela Shemais b'nei Yisrael, Zok the Heilige Rashi, Afal pi shemonan b'chayein, even though that he counted all the Yidden when they came down to Mitzrayim, he counts them again. Lohidiach chiboson, to show them how he loved them. When you have something special, you count it. It's so precious in your life. Just like the stars, Hashem brings them out and counts them with their names and their count. As it says, Hamoitzi Misbar Tzvom L'kulam B'Shem Yikra. So I got to tell you a great story. It's a story about me, not me, my mother and Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Now, my mother was a very, very frum lady. And I always say the difference between my mother and Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. And this is so true. My mother, I remember one time, I was sitting Rosh Hashanah at the table. I had a sefer on the table. She said, take the sefer off the table. In 6 months, it's going to be Pesach. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was once sitting at the Seder table, and he said, we got to do tshuva. In 6 months, it's Rosh Hashanah. So my mother, on Rosh Hashanah, is worrying about Pesach. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, on Pesach, is worried about Rosh Hashanah. Why do I tell you this? Because I went with my mother and my late brother, Rab Kalman, Zechreinu Livracha. We went to Rabbi Yankov to ask him a shayla. It was a whole thing about my mother going to Eretz Yisrael. And Rabbi Yankov asked my mother why she wants to go. Rabbi Yankov was sitting here, I was here, my mother was here. And my mother said because she wanted to see the grandchildren. My sister had moved to Eretz Yisrael many, many years earlier. She hadn't seen the grandchildren of that family for many years, and she wanted to see. So Rabbi Yankov, in his soft manner, said, how many grandchildren do you have? And my mother didn't answer. So, I said, Ma, the Rosh Hashiva asked you a question. She said, I heard him. You know she's not counting, right? I know her, right? So she's frumer than Rabbi Yankov. So, I was so embarrassed. Yeah, I'm telling you, she's here, I'm here, Rabbi Yankov's here. So I said to Rabbi Yankov, in Shuldik, my mama means ayin hora. My mother holds that it might be an ayin hora, if you count the children. So Rabbi Yankov is so edel. He doesn't address her. He says, "Du kennst die Sorgen in mein Namen, right? Kennst die Sorgen in mein Namen. As I hold, as memuz zählen alle einiglach. You have to count all your grandchildren. V'amadav dankbar sein for jeder einikol. You got to be thankful for every grandchild." And my mother still didn't tell her. I'm not telling you what to do. But the point is, you see, Rashi says that the Eibishter counted to see how many he had because he loved them so much. That's what Rabbi Yankov's saying. Now, you could count your own grandchildren. Maybe you don't have to go tell it to everybody. But according to Rabbi Yankov and according to the Pasuk, it looks like you got to know. Now, I will tell you this, that somebody, when they ask my Rebbe, Rabbi Dovid Trenk, how many grandchildren you have, he always says, not enough. So he doesn't say, now I'm sure he must know himself, because after all, Rabbi Yankov says you got to know, you have to be grateful for everyone. But that doesn't mean that you have to broadcast it. So validate somebody. Make them feel special. And when you give a compliment so they feel it. I'll tell you what happened with my daughter. It's just incredible. My son-in-law told me this story. My daughter, Elisheva, she had a baby, and a few weeks later there was a bar mitzvah in Far Rockaway. So her and her husband Ephraim, they walked. It was quite a walk, and they walked to the bar mitzvah. So when they came in, the mother, who was a friend of my daughter, said, "Oh, you shouldn't have come. You just had a baby. What are you doing here? It's probably so hard for you to be here." And my daughter said, "You know something? After she said that, I was thinking, I shouldn't have come." That's not a compliment. What the lady meant to say was, "It's so nice of you to come. It's probably exhausting, and I appreciate your presence." That's how you give a compliment. You don't say a negative. I want to show you a compliment. You can't believe this. There's a fellow in Lakewood, I just met him for the first time a few weeks ago, but he called me a while ago to tell me this story. It seems that everybody in Lakewood knows him. His name is Simcha Weinman, and he's a photographer, a famous photographer in Lakewood. So he told me that in 1997, he was told that he wanted to go get a picture of the Gedolim in Eretz Yisrael. He wanted to go take a picture of Rabbi Yashiv. So they told him that Rabbi Yashiv gets up 4 o'clock in the morning, and he sits by an open window, and everybody knows that Rabbi Yashiv always used to sing the Gemara with the same tune that he sang it as a young man. Even when he was 90 and 95, he always said it in a certain sing-song. If I knew what it was, I would tell it to you, but I don't know what it was, how he sang it. But everybody knew that he learned out loud, and he sang the Gemara. So he was told, you go 4 o'clock in the morning, nobody's in the street, you'll be able to get a picture of him by the open window. Fine. Now Simcha told me that he would love to learn. He loves learning. But he finds it a little bit difficult. It's not easy for him to learn. But he admires Talmidei Chachamim, and he loves them, and he loves to watch them learn, and he tries to learn himself, but it's not easy. He told me he gets up early in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, and he's coming towards Rabbi Yashiv's house. Now it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Sure enough, there, Rabbi Yashiv is by the open window, and he was watching, and he's got the lens of his camera focused, and he's about to take the picture of Rabbi Yashiv. And he is so overwhelmed by the sweetness and the beauty of the Gadol Hador learning alone that he puts down the camera and he starts crying. He's so overwhelmed. Look how beautiful this is. He's zocher to see that. And before he can even get a chance to pick up his camera again, Rabbi Yashiv, at night or 4 o'clock in the morning, the voice carries. Rabbi Yashiv hears somebody crying. He looks out, and there's a young man standing 4 o'clock in the morning. And he motions to him, come in, come in. And Simcha told me he comes in, and Rabbi Yashiv says to him, is everything okay? Like, why are you crying? So he said, Rebbe, I really came to take a picture of the Rebbe. But I saw how you were learning. I was so overwhelmed by the beauty. I wish I could learn like that. I find it so hard to learn. I wish that I could learn. But when I saw you learning, I was so begeistert, I was so overwhelmed. And he started crying again. Listen to what Rabbi Yashiv told him. I'm going to quote it exactly. I wrote it down exactly. He said, Deine Yiddische Trehren seinen Wert mein ganzer Lernen. Could you imagine that? Imagine Rabbi Yashiv telling you that. Deine Yiddische Trehren seinen Wert mein ganzer Lernen. I get the chills when I tell it to you. You know what he told me? He said he came back to Lakewood and he decided he's going to learn no matter what. And there was a kid who was a very bright boy in his early teens. And even though that he was embarrassed as anything, he said he went over to that kid. He said, I know you're a smart boy. Would you learn with me? And now he has a Seder learning every morning. Rabbi Yashiv didn't tell him to learn. Rabbi Yashiv gave him a compliment that his holy tears are worth Rabbi Yashiv's learning. And that's what Rabbi Dovid Trenk, and that's what Rav Hutner is talking about. When you talk to a Talmud with love, and when you talk to a Talmud with validation and concern, you could get them to do anything, not because you're going to get it, because they really want to do it. They just need motivation. That's really what they need. I'll show you motivation. Every time we go to Vilna, and in a few weeks we're going to go again to Poland, and Vilna will be by the kever of Rabbi Chaim Oizer. I always feel Rabbi Chaim Oizer, Gruzinski was the Zayda of Klal Yisrael. You ever see the picture of him with a big Litvish yarmulke? I got to tell you this, it has nothing to do with the speech. My favorite dream ever that I had, my favorite dream ever, I dreamt one night, I was sitting in Shul Yom Kippur, and Rabbi Chaim was sitting right next to me with his big Litvish yarmulke. And I turned to him, it's hard to believe, but in a dream anything could happen. I turned to him, I said, I would love to give you a kiss, but I can't kiss you, it's in a shul. Would you mind coming outside so I could give you a kiss? And then I woke up. So I don't know if I ever kissed him or not. But I know why I dreamt it. It's pashut. Because in shul, in Yom Kippur, my Zayda used to sit next to me. And I always say that Rabbi Chaim Oizer was the Zayda of Klal Yisrael. So Zayda, Gzeir Shova. That's why I dreamt that. But somebody once came to Rabbi Chaim Oizer, a young boy who was supposed to go into the Russian army. And he wanted an exemption. He was afraid that, if he goes to the army, who knows what could happen to him. And Rabbi Chaim Oizer said to him, do you wear tzitzis? The boy couldn't lie to the Gadol Hador. He said, no. He said, do you wear tefillin? He said, no. He said, are you Hashem Shabbos? And the boy said, no. Imagine the chutzpah of a kid. He's not from. He's coming to the Gadol Hador, to get an exemption. Listen to what Rabbi Chaim Oizer told him. He said, young man, I give you a bracha that the Russian government should be as disappointed in you as I am. Can you imagine what would he say to that? Isn't that amazing? And you know something? Next week the boy came back and he said, Rebbe, your bracha was makuyim. And he picked up a shirt and he showed him that he was wearing tzitzis. And the kid wore tefillin. And he was the Shem Shabbos the rest of his life. What would any of us done? Chutzpah. You come to the Gadol Hador, no tzitzis, no tefillin, no Shabbos, and you want the Rav to give you a bracha? What are you talking about? But he gave him a bracha. But he got the message across. That's what Rabbi Dovid Trenk would have done. That's what a great Rebbe does. I'll tell you something very interesting. Reb Meir Shapiro once asked a very interesting question. And the teretz is a fabulous question. We should all know it because we all go through things in life. Rabbi Shapiro asked that if you look in Parshas B'chukoisai, at the end of Chumash Vayikra, the last parsha in B'chukoisai is Erchen. Erchen is values. Somebody wants to give money to the Beis HaMikdash, and he wants to give a certain amount, the value of a man, the value of a woman, the value of a child. So Rabbi Shapiro says, why does the Chumash end with those dinim of Erchen? And besides, shouldn't it be by tzedakah? Or shouldn't it be by karbonis? You want to give a carbon, you want to give money, what's it doing at the end of B'chukoisai? And Rabbi Shapiro says something gavaldik. He says, no, it has nothing to do with being the end of B'chukoisai. It's because it's right after the Toichacha. Right after the Toichacha, where Klal Yisrael goes through so much tragedy and so much pain. A person who goes through tragedy and turmoil in life sometimes looks at themselves and say, I'm nothing. Hashem hates me. I'm not worth anything. So the Torah wants to show you, no, don't say that. Everybody's got value. Even after Toichacha, even after difficulties in life, Hashem still loves you. You've got value. Just remember that. The Parsha of Erchen, it's not that it ends B'chukoisai. It's following Toichacha. That a person should always feel they have value. How are you going to feel you have value? You could tell it to yourself. Of course, you have to have self-esteem. But we know that that's hard to maintain. Many, many people suffer from self-esteem. But if they have a lack of self-esteem, but if they have good friends, a great spouse, or they have good connections with other people who make them feel special, they're going to feel good about themselves, and they're going to accomplish. You can't accomplish if you're sad and you're depressed. When you feel good about yourself, that's when you could accomplish. So listen to this story. I just heard this story from my son, Rabbi Avram Zelek, who told it over. He was very, very close to Rabbi Yisrael Belsky, Alav Shalom. So he heard from the family that when the family was sitting Shiva for Rabbi Yisrael, as a young fellow came in, nobody knew who he was. And, after a while, when he was there, so they asked him who he is. He said, well, I'm a former Talmud of your father, and he saved my life. So he said, what does that mean? So he said, I was a Talmud, and then I went off the derech. For 2.5 years, no Shabbos, no tzitzis, no tefillin, nothing. And one day I was walking in Brooklyn, and I saw my Rebbe in the distance. It's very tall, it's not easy to miss. Rabbi Belsky. He said, I didn't know if I should go over to him or not. I didn't know if he'd recognize me. I didn't know if he would want to see me because after all, I wasn't from anymore. But I figured, he was my Rebbe. I got to say Shalom Aleichem. So I went over to him. And as soon as he saw me, he embraced me. He said, Oi, how are you? Shalom Aleichem, so nice to see you. He said, well, Rebbe, I'm just not from anymore. He said, that's just a phase. He said, in 2 months, you'll be back. You'll be back. It's only a phase. And that was it. And they got into a conversation. Now, Rabbi Belsky was very sick already at that time. I don't know if this boy knew that or not. But he was living at home. And 2 months later, to the day, his mother woke him up. And she said, Rabbi Belsky passed away last night. He said, I can't believe it. I just saw him. And that morning, he put on tefillin for the first time in 3 years. And during the Shiva, he went and he said to the family, I started wearing tefillin again, exactly like your father said. He said it was a phase. I was going to change in 2 months, almost 2 months to the day. That's when I heard that he passed away. And that's what happened, because Rabbi Belsky embraced him. I'm sure Rabbi Belsky invested a lot of time in this kid, like he did with any other of the Talmidim. And he didn't push him away. Kid wasn't wearing a yarmulke. He probably wasn't dressed appropriately, the way Yeshiva man or any Ben Torah should be dressed. Who knows if he had an earring in both ears and a necklace. But that didn't make a difference. You have to be able to see past that. And if you can see past that, and you look into the heart of a person, That's a tremendous difference. Then you validate a person. That's really what it's all about. So I want to tell you a story about a father who I know very well. The father had a son who had the curliest hair you could imagine. And this family had the minhag that they don't cut the hair until the kid is 3 years old. So this little boy, his yarmulke would fly off all the time. He would ride his bike and the hair was like Brillo. And it always fell off. And it bothered the father no end. Every night he would yell at the kid, why don't you pick up your yarmulke or whatever. One night the father's sitting at his desk and the kid is riding his three-wheeler and he comes around in front of the desk and the yarmulke flies off and the father had just had it. And he got up and he said, "You such a..." And then he was thinking, what is he, crazy? What is he going to call this kid? He said, "Tzaddik! You're such a tzaddik! How could you drop your yarmulke and not pick it up?" And from that night on, that kid never, ever dropped the yarmulke without picking it up. Whether he was riding a bike or he was in the basketball court in Camp Pagoda, wherever he was, the second the yarmulke fell off, he picked it up. You know, because he's a tzaddik. Now, what happens if Chas v'Shalom, the father would have called him something else? That would be terrible. And you know what the pasuk says? Listen how Mefarshim learned this pasuk. In Mishlei Tes, pasuk Ches. Al toichach leitz. Don't give mussar to a joker. Pen yisnaecha is going to hate you. Hoichach l'chacham. Give mussar to a chacham. Don't waste your time with a leitz. V'yaveka, he'll love you. But listen how they touch. Al toichach. Don't give mussar and call the guy a leitz. Don't say you're a good for nothing. You're a Russia. You call somebody a name, Pen Yisnaecha is going to hate you. Tell him, how could you forget the bench? How could you skip with you're tzaddik? If you're a tzaddik, then it looks, wow, my father thinks I'm a tzaddik. So of course I got to pick up my yarmulke. That's how you got to do it. Now, I want to talk about a topic for a second, a periphery aspect of this topic, because I don't want to get into vaccinations or not. That's not what the topic is at all. Whether you do vaccinate or don't vaccinate, that's your own situation. But recently in the Wall Street Journal, which is probably one of the only papers that you could still read without being embarrassed, there was an article, and the article was, it's so interesting, how to persuade parents to vaccinate their kids. How do you persuade parents? So it's not a question, again, now, of vaccination or not, but how do you talk to a parent if you want to convince them about something? So listen to this, what this doctor wrote. The most successful physicians I've seen have two things in common: empathy and humility. Empathy means that they care and that they're humble. We know what doesn't work, and it's the equivalent of when a child says, "But why?" Many children ask why, and what do you say? "Oh, well, because I said so." That's not an answer. That's not an answer. Like Matis Yo says, those kids are not dropouts, those are pushouts. It doesn't work to be condescending, judgmental, or impatient or angry. So let's try a different way. And this is how a doctor should talk. And this is how we should all talk to other people that we're trying to convince. We all love our children. We all want the best for them. As your doctor, I understand you're not trying to hurt your child, so let's talk. Now, when a doctor talks like that, so the parent feels comfortable, they don't put up that barrier of resistance. Look, we're all on the same page. We all want to help the child. Let's talk. Let's see what makes sense and what doesn't. That's how you talk. Facts matter. Tones matter. Body language matters. A gentle, inquisitive, why do you think that is more effective than an impatient, why do you think that? And you know something? We have to be careful how we talk to our spouses. You know, Baruch Hashem, there are many, many people here that are married for many, many years. And what happens is you begin to, take the spouse for granted. And sometimes you'll say something to a spouse that you would never say to anybody else. It's amazing. I come to homes many, many times, obviously, as a male. And the day of the bris, everybody's nice and fancy. Everybody's nice and... But, you should see them the day after. Or the day before, right? Very nasty. They wouldn't talk like that to anybody else. So we have to have empathy, we have to care for other people, and we have to deal with humility. What does it mean, validation? I have a cousin, Eski Cook. Happens to be Dovid Trenk's sister-in-law. She's a fabulous, fabulous artist. And you know what she told me? How her mother validated her art even before the first grade. Could you imagine? She used to draw pictures as a child, and she would show it to her mother. So her mother said, Eski, this is so beautiful. Come here. I want to show you something. And she drew a little C with a circle, copyright on it. And Eski would say, what is that? No, copyright. This is so special. It's only yours. Nobody can copy it. Only when she got older did she realize how chashuv the copyright sign is. Not that it meant anything, but that's how the mother validated the child's artwork. A 4-year-old, she's putting a copyright sign on it. I know somebody who, Baruch Hashem, married off 2 children, and when the child, both children, when they got engaged, she did the most remarkable thing. She called every single person that had read a shidduch to their child, and that they went out and thanked them and said, you brought me a step closer. Now, imagine you're a shadchan, or you tried to read a shidduch and it didn't work out. So you think, the people forgot about you. No, you validate them. You validate, you make them feel special. They spend time, and they're going to spend time for others. There are people here that have shidduch parties in their home, and after a while they get sick of it. You know why? Because nobody thanks them for the effort. Many times it doesn't work. We know that. I've been to places here in Brooklyn, we've done it so many times, and after a while the families, nobody says thank you. And when they get engaged, they don't even tell you. Thank people. That's what validation is all about. When was the last time, think about it, you don't have to raise your hands. When was the last time you thanked a Bal Korah for davening, for laning? Think about that. I try every single time. I can't say I always remember. When I get an aliyah, if I'm going out of town in another shul, they give me an aliyah and I make a mishaberach. I make a mishaberach for the host, for the place that I'm staying, and for the Bal Korah. And the Bal Korah, like, he's preparing ready for the next aliyah. He looks up like, are you serious? Me? Yeah, you're laning, right? Nobody else got a lane. Nobody else spent last night, a whole night preparing. Go over. I was just on a trip, right? Nobody wants to daven for the Yomid. What happened? You don't know how to daven for the Yomid? Well, what's the big deal? Yeah, but nobody wants to do it. So the guy who did it, you owe me yashakoyach. Because you didn't have to get up. So validate people by saying thank you. That's what's so important. I have a grandson who's a Rebbe in Waterbury. His name is Moshe Dov Heber. So he asked this kid, 6th grade, he said, did you guys ever get a compliment that made you realize you were special? So one little boy said, when I was a little boy, I always used to sing. And my mother always told me I had a beautiful voice. And then eventually I joined the choir and I got some solos. Because his mother complimented him. Another one said that the Rebbe, Rabbi Brescher, the principal, said to him, I see that you learned very well. You could probably learn 20 minutes alone every night. And now the boy's learning more than that. Why? Because he got a compliment. That's what compliments are all about. And you know something? When you mention somebody's name, that's also a very big compliment. Call somebody by their name. Everybody loves their name. So I want to give everybody homework. From now till Ma'ariv, not Ma'ariv tonight, Ma'ariv tomorrow night, let's see if you can give 5 compliments. I'll give you some examples. Why don't you go over to a guy and say, that is a beautiful tie. Now, Mr. Metzger, where is he? There he is. He knows I love his ties. I was hoping you'd wear a tie tonight so I could compliment it. But I'm telling you, at gateways, you don't need lights. You just put on his tie. That's it. A well-dressed person. So he's never going to forget this comment. I mean, he might not talk to me again, but... or you tell somebody, aren't there people in shul that you're inspired the way they daven? Rabbi Goldman is sitting here, right? So your father was Shalom. I remember I was in the Lycos share with him. Was there ever a more edel person than Rabbi Shlomo Goldman? The finest, most wonderful, edelest Talmud of Rabbi David Leibowitz. Just beautiful. Beautiful person. and you go over and you compliment somebody, they never forget it, never. So let's see, you tell somebody, your davening inspires me, or you got a great laugh, or you're one of a kind, or when you see somebody's child do something, call them and give them a nachas call. It makes them feel so special. It makes no difference how old the parents are or how old the child is. Make those calls. Give a compliment. And I'm telling you, when you start giving compliments, you're going to get compliments. But that's not the point. The point is you validate somebody. You make somebody feel special. You know how many times I've called Yisrael Besser? One of the greatest writers in our generation. He writes an article about Dovid Trenk. He writes an article. Anything that he writes in Mishpachas, it's remarkable. Get his number and call him. I learned it from Rav Segel. Rav Segel, if a mechaber of a sefer came out, it was written in his biography, he would call the mechaber and say, that's a wonderful sefer. She continue weiter. And there are many, many people that are doing great stuff today. And we gain from them. And if we gain from them, even if you pay for the sefer, you still owe them a thanks. And you know something, I'll tell you funny. I love to give compliments. Those of you who know me know that that's true. But there was a compliment, and there is a compliment, that I didn't realize how people remember it for years. And I only say it to those that I really mean it. And I'll go over to somebody after a speech and I'll say, you're a great listener. Really. And there are certain people that you could see that they could repeat the whole speech. They're so into it. And it means a lot as to a speaker. You don't want anybody sleeping. You don't want anybody dozing off or, watching the clock or whatever. It's 9:59, by the way. But whatever. But the point is that, it means something. And sometimes I'll go back to England. I'll go back to a place where I was. I said, Rabbi, remember me? I was the guy that was the great listener. Like, I couldn't believe it. It's amazing. So, recently I was in England. And this guy's sitting up front, and he's falling asleep, and every 5 seconds he's dozing off. And then he comes over to me. Okay, don't say anything, for gosh sakes. But anyway, he comes over to me, and he says, Rabbi, I just want you to know, I fall asleep for every speaker, but for you, I was up. So I was going to tell him, I was just about to get your negavasa, but, I didn't. So I just want to tell you one more thing. We'll review, and then we'll end with a great thought. When Moshe Rabbeinu realized that he's not going to go into Eretz Yisrael, so he said to Hashem in Parshas Pinchas, Yifkoid Hashem alakei haruchos l'chol basar. Hashem, you who understand the mindset of every person, Ish al-Aida, appoint a person on the community. So all the Mefarshim ask, Moshe Rabbeinu should have just said, Hashem, appoint somebody on the community. Why did he say, Ish al-Aruchais? Hashem, you understand every mindset. And Rashi says, Amal Lefanov, this is what Moshe Rabbeinu meant. Rabbeinu Shalom, Golav Yadu Lefanecha Dati Shel Kol Echad Ve'echad. You know every person. Ve'einam Doimen Zelaz, and no two people are alike. Man Aleim Manig, appoint a leader. She Heseva Kol Echad Ve'echad Lefi Dati, that could tolerate every person according to his mindset. You have to be very careful when you say things to people. There's some people that's so sensitive. You say something about them, they'll never forget it. They'll be hurt forever. And some people, they can wash it off. So everybody is different. And that's what the Medrash says. Just like no two faces are alike, it's in Bamidbar Rabbi Chafal of Beis. No two faces are alike. No two faces, no mindsets are alike. Everybody's got their own daya. So if that's the case, we don't need that book, Men are from Yerushalayim and Women are from Bnei Brak. Right, if you know what I mean. Right? We're all different. So let's review everything that we said, and we'll end with a fabulous story. Let's remember Rabbi Dovid Trenk, who was nifter recently. Why did everybody love him? Because he loved everybody else. And he complimented, and he invigorated, and he built people. That's what Rav Hutner was telling us. That's why over there it says, Yehi kvoi tamidach chavev alecha kishaloch. Let's remember that's what Rav Aaron said. Why did they die before Shavuos? Because if you don't love Yidden and you don't have kavod zebazeh, you can't give it over to the next generation. That's what the morale says. When you give kavod, you give life. If you take away kavod, you're taking away life. Let's remember that one compliment that Rav Dovid Trenk gave to Meir Zlotowitz, every one of us has gained because of the printing of all the wonderful, extraordinary art scroll Svarim. Let's remember that beautiful letter that Mr. Stern wrote to Nehemiah Passel in Houston, and how they were so proud to hang up that beautiful letter of Chizuk. Let's remember Rashi tells us in the beginning of Shmois and beginning of Bamidbar, Hashem counts the Yidden because He loves them, and He wants them to know how much He loves them. Let's remember what Rav Elyashiv said to Simcha Wyman, "Then Yiddische Treren sind wert mein ganzer Lernen." Let's remember what Rabbi Chaim Moses said to that boy, "I give you a bracha, the Russian government should be as disappointed in you as I am." Let's remember how Rabelsky embraced that kid that was not from, and told him, "It's only a phase, don't worry, you'll come back in 2 months." And indeed, he did come back in 2 months. And let's remember, Al Teichach Leitz. Don't ever call a name. Don't call anybody stupid. You could say that a child did a stupid thing, but don't ever call a child stupid. Don't ever call a spouse a name. Ever. No excuse, no matter what. They could have done a stupid thing, that you could say. We all do stupid things. But never to use foul language. Let's remember to call all those who do us favors, those who read Shidduchim for us. Thank the Balkaira. Give compliments freely. Let's see if we could give a compliment, 5 compliments between now and tomorrow night. And finally, let's remember that we're all different. I just want to end with this magnificent, painful story to listen to. The Klausenberger Rebbe, Nebuch, lost a wife and 11 children in the war. He once said, the pasuk says, "Vayikochem vayavreim es anochal," that Yaakov Avinu took his wife and 11 children over the stream. He said, "I also took a wife and 11 children, but I took them over the stream of blood, and I took them to the land of Kedoshim." So you can imagine how devastated the Klausenberger Rebbe was after the war. But yet, in the DP camps, he opened up a yeshiva. He opened up a yeshiva and he opened up a Beis Yaakov for the girls. And there was a young boy, a teenage boy, who Nebuch had lost so many of his family and had gone off the derech. And they went over to this little boy. His name was Meshulam. And everybody tried to convince him to come back to Frumkeit. He absolutely refused. So they went to the Rebbe, because the Rebbe knew this boy's father, Leibish. And he had heard about this boy. So the Rebbe said, "Send him in to me." Now they went over to Meshulam and they said, "The Rebbe would like to see you." Now he knew very well what the Rebbe was going to try to tell him. And he decided no matter what, he is not going to get into a conversation with the Rebbe. So they brought him in, and the little boy is standing in front of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says to him, "The Heis Meshulam?" He said, "Yeah." "You was Leibish's kind, yeah? Your Leibish's son." "Just, yeah, that's it. No more. Not going to say anything." He said, "Ich heard die Fleck seiner Masmid. I hear that you used to learn a lot." He says, "Yeah." And then the Rebbe said something to him that the kid was not expecting. He said to him in Yiddish, he said, "You're angry, right?" And then the little boy looked up. He said, "You're angry, right?" And he nodded his head. He said, "I know why you're angry. Because they took the best ones and they left you." He said, "That's how I feel. They took the best ones and they left me." And the Rebbe started crying. And he put his hands on the boy's shoulder and he put his head on the kid's head. And they cried. And the kid just burst out in tears. And the Rebbe said to him, "I agree with you. I understand how you feel. That's how I feel. They took the best ones and they left us." And he repeated it. And for a half hour they cried. And that little boy grew up. And he told me the story himself. And he said, that night I said Shema for the first time. He said, and then I slowly came back to Yiddishkeit. I moved to Baltimore. I met him as an old man in Kew Garden Hills. And I said, tell me, what did the Rebbe say that changed you? And listen to what he said. He said, everybody spoke to my head. The Rebbe spoke to my heart. And that's what a compliment was. The Rebbe didn't talk down to him. The Rebbe wasn't going to try to make him frum after he lost everything. The Rebbe understood how angry the kid was. He understood his sadness because he too felt sad. But the Rebbe was able to overcome that sadness. But because he felt that pain of that child, he was able to bring the child back. That's what the fellow told me. And I once saw a beautiful expression about a compliment. A compliment is verbal sunshine. And we all love sunshine. Let's try to build people, not to break people. Every one of us is different. Every one of us has different kishraynos. Let's find the kishron in another person. Let's put our arm around other people and make them feel special because we all are special. Everyone has talents. And if we realize that we have talents and we're not jealous of each other, but we just want to build each other, we'll be able to bring that achdus and be zeicher to see Mashiach in our time. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.
Shem Irgun Shir Torah, Mrs. Boston, we're just left with one shayla after such an amazing shir. Who do we thank first? Do we thank Rabbi Krohn for the amazing drasha? Do we thank the sponsors? Do we thank Hashem? Do we thank Rabbi Bald? Do we say Do we say Achron Chaviv? Do we say Chaviv Adam Shniver B'Tselem? Who do we thank first? We'll have to have another shir on Dine Kedima, the brachas, B'Haidah, Shvach B'Haidah. Topic for next time. In any case, I'd like to give a big yashikayach to everyone, for everyone for coming, for everyone for listening, for Rabbi Krohn, for all this, to Hashem that everything worked out tonight, all the issues worked out, and to the sponsors, Rabbi and Mrs. Dovid Lang, as Husser for Shleimer, for Dvara Bas Chana, B'Soy Shacher Yisrael, and Be'elam Hashem, Lila Nishmas Rabbi Yishayo, Yisacha Ben Simcha Bunim, Olav Shalom. And part of the thanks and Hakaras HaTov is to show Hakaras HaTov to Irgun Shir Torah and sponsor a shir. The shirim cost a lot of money to organize, the programs and advertisements, etc., etc. Call Irgun Shir Torah 718-851-8651. Email tapecenter@yeshivanet.com. Have a great schus of the Abotzas HaTorah Derabim worldwide. CDs of tonight's show will be available shortly. CDs of last night's are available as well in the back. Shakar to everyone for coming and listening and joining and supporting. Chananya ben Akashem, Rotzak HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakis Yisrael L'Figure Hebron Torah Mitzvah Shener Malo Inoi Chofes L'Man Tzidka Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh.